this schedule really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff.
Areas that, you need to get from experience, which is just, hey, I need to make quicker decisions.
How do you define success for this team?
National championship.
What's up, y'all? I'm Bud Elliott here. This is my summer school series on the Cover 3 podcast where we try to cover as many college football teams as we can. And today, it's a big one. They played for the national championship last year. Notre Dame. I'm going to Irish Illustrated. I'm going to my man, Tim O'Malley. Tim, welcome back, dude.
Hey, thanks, Bud. Enjoyed it last year. That should be fun.
Absolutely. So, we mentioned it. They played for the national title last year, which is a pretty amazing accomplishment in itself. Can come up a little bit short against a pretty loaded Ohio State team. What's the general vibe right now in South Bend?
Yeah, I think that run, Georgia and Penn State really validated it too. I mean, they kind of had to beat IU at home. If that didn't happen, it would have been a wasted season for many fans. But the win over Georgia, the win over Penn State, the dramatic fashion of it. And I think the fact they didn't fold against Ohio State, if you stop Jeremiah Smith on one play, maybe you have a chance to go down and try to tie. So I can't think of a time in South Bend since Lou Holtz left that Notre Dame fans have embraced the program more. And they love the fact that Freeman has modernized so much with NIL. The transfer portal, I think the way ND does it, and it's actually the way Ohio State does it too, they augment with like 8 guys. They only lose a few. I think the fans still embrace that. Freeman's always been outspoken about we're going to major in recruiting and minor in the portal. He's actually done it. I didn't know if that would be possible. And I think whether they're right or not, fans are happy they have a homegrown quarterback this year. It's not going to be a one-year transfer, but I'd like to point out that one-year transfer is a pretty popular guy and did awfully well for the Irish last year. Riley Leonard, I think, won a lot of people over by the end.
He was exactly what they needed. I loved how this team scrapped last year. There was a real kind of they had skill, but there was a real kind of gritty quality to them. It was just they were hard to kill, right? Yes. There are points in that natty where Ohio State looks like they're going to pull away from this thing, and Notre Dame just keeps throwing counterpunches. It was fun to watch. You mentioned the quarterback, Tim. Are we safe to assume it's Carr?
I mean, we do. I also assumed Minchie. If you would have said back in January, who's the transfer, I would have said Minchie. So credit to Kenny Minchie for obviously making that a true 3-quarterback race. Every time someone said it's a 3-quarterback race, we're like, okay, yeah, sure, it's a 3-quarterback race. But it became one because either Steve Angeli was 1C or 2B, and that's why he's transferring. And he will return to Notre Dame with Syracuse on Senior Day. That's a fun little subplot for this season. But I think it will be CJ Carr. My theory is Kenny Minchie would have to have a fantastic summer. And to explain that, I just don't think there's enough time in camp to go out and win. And you get about 10 days, right, before Notre Dame has to start prepping for the season and prepping for that road trip to Miami to start the year. I would bet a fair amount of money at CJ Carr. They do like Minchie because he can run as well. I've heard people on campus say he actually had the best arm of the 3. I don't believe that because I've watched CJ Carr throw a lot when healthy. And I think Carr will be a very good quarterback. Of course, he begins at Miami and then A&M comes to town. So that's not the easiest start for a guy.
For folks who haven't seen, Carr is not the athlete that Riley Leonard was. Not that many are, obviously. Leonard was a legitimate, pretty good basketball prospect as well, obviously. How does this offense change under Carr? And second part, do you foresee a possibility, just given how much they've done QB run with Leonard, that they still work in packages with Minchie?
Yeah, we asked Freeman about that. He didn't seem to have have the bent to want to do a 2 QB package. We brought it up. I think if Minchie actually runs like Riley Leonard, they would, because Riley Leonard was an automatic on 3rd and 2. Even against Ohio State, he's the guy you call on 3rd and 2. So I think that's where the offense changes is they love their offensive line. They love their running backs. But 3rd and 2, even 3rd and 3 was Riley Leonard twice, and you were getting the first down. I think he got stopped once against Georgia. He got stood up on a 4th and 2. Maybe remember one other time during the season. I mean, he was a machine in 3rd down. So you call things a little differently, maybe. That is not CJ Carr. I wouldn't even think CJ Carr would be a very good quarterback sneak guy. Sam Hartman was not either. If you were, obviously Notre Dame fans remember that against Ohio State, but there's some guys that are, there's some guys that aren't. Like Tyler Buckner back in the day would have been. He was a rugged guy that could get QB sneaks. So I think there's going to be a lot more RPO play action passing for CJ Carr to augment that running game, but short yardage becomes, I think, the Jeremiah Love show, and they did not lose a running back in the portal. I can't get over it. They are stacked in that room because they had young talent coming up. They had a guy returning from injury in Jabron Payne. Seemed like he would leave for sure. All they lost was their running backs coach, Dylan McCullough, to the Raiders, but when you go get Jawan Sider from Penn State. He knows
Hell of
what
a
he's doing as well. I could not believe that, actually. He left a heck of a room to come to Notre Dame.
As a Florida guy, I mean, Sider has been a really difference maker recruiting in our state down here for a long time. So that was something we noticed down here. It was like, oh, okay, like Irish are making some. They're not playing around. So probably more play action passing, more RPO. That makes sense. What are the expectations of Carr in this first year? I mean, it does seem like this team is pretty loaded still. So he's going to have to play at a high level. Does the fact they didn't take a transfer say anything about their belief in that room?
Yeah, it finally did. And that's why they took transfers before, was because I think they liked CJ Carr coming in, but as a true freshman, they weren't going to trust that team last year to CJ Carr instead of Riley Leonard, obviously. Marcus Freeman even said, this is our trust in the room. Now, he would never have said that in the past when they took a quarterback, but once you don't take a quarterback, you can say, we believe in all three of these guys, and now it's down to two. For Carr, to be fair, it's to kind of get through that first month where you play five of your first 6 games are tough. They have Purdue in there as well. If CJ Carr finishes this season with this schedule 11-1, they're going to the playoffs. Last year, easily. If they have 2 losses, you don't know. Last year, if they had 2 losses, they were way out of the playoffs with that schedule because it was just not conducive to a playoff run. I think if CJ Carr can settle in those first 2 games, goes 2-0, the sky's the limit, because he is he's their best passer since Jimmy Clausen in terms of pure passing ability. He's stronger than Clausen. I always thought that was Clausen's kind of fatal flaw going to the NFL, was he just was not a physically strong guy. And Carr's faster than that, but he's no faster than any of the other quarterbacks you've seen come through here. Tyler Buckner's a better athlete than CJ Carr, but I think Carr's your standard everyday good college athlete at quarterback. Riley Leonard broke the Notre Dame touchdown record at quarterback. He was a fantastic college runner. That is just a total change in the offense for Notre Dame. And, I know Denbrock was comfortable with it because he had Jaden Daniels, obviously, prior to that.
So you mentioned the running back room, which is totally loaded.
Yeah.
Had they spoken at all about load management for these guys? This is a team that expects to make a deep playoff run. It kind of feels like you got to come out and fire your bullets early, but then how the schedule finishes, maybe have the month of November to maybe rest a guy like that.
Yeah, it's so interesting for Jeremiah Love as the first young player, and he said it last year. He's like, they talked to me when they recruited me about load management at running back. Like, we want 2 or 3 really good running backs to save your career for the NFL. I think that's genius recruiting at the running back position by Marcus Freeman. So Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price came back, signed a good NIL deal. He didn't go anywhere. He could start for 120 teams at tailback. Like, he's a really good backup running back. Aeneas Williams stayed. He was a guy that could have gone somewhere else. He kind of sparked them against Penn State. Yeah, I think, you shoot your shot with those 2 guys in the first couple games. When you go down to Arkansas, just because you go down to SEC country, Notre Dame's not been down to Arkansas. That place is going to be wild for Notre Dame. You have Boise State coming in, which is fun. USC. Then it gets smoother, and I think you can start looking to your depth at running back. But you got to rely on Jeremiah Love, because he's their differentiator, man. Jeremiah Love is the differentiator in that room. I don't care how much I like Jadarian Price. Jeremiah Love separated himself last year from most guys healthy. And of course, Penn State fans remember when he wasn't healthy, he still had the best run of the football season, I think, for 2 yards.
So last year, some of the teams that had some more success against the Irish were a little bit not to what it was 2 or 3 years ago, where they were just completely disrespectful of Notre Dame's receivers. But that still seemed like something you could exploit. It's like, hey, we will dare you. And granted, Leonard was like a decent college thrower, but not like a real NFL thrower. The legs were the bigger threat. What are we looking at receiver this year for Notre Dame?
No, it's really interesting when we talked to Mike Denbrock. This is a second year's offensive coordinator, third stint, second year's offensive coordinator. He said at no point last year did we have confidence in our passing game. And he meant the receivers. He meant the quarterback with the receivers. So this year they brought in Malachi Fields. Notre Dame, Virginia actually came to Notre Dame. And I remember watching Malachi Fields and thought, I don't know if it's called tampering or not, but that's a good guy to bring into Notre Dame right now. And Malachi Fields is now in South Bend. So it is not a deep group. I think most fans naturally would remember Jaden Greathouse because he went off against Penn State and Ohio State. We thought he would do that all year, and he did save the best for last. I'd rather you go off against Penn State and Ohio State than Army and Navy, of course. So that worked out really well for Greathouse. But that's the 1-2 punch. They brought in Will Pauling, Wisconsin slot receiver, also not a high-powered passing offense he's coming from. So He was there all spring. And then Jordan Faison is the lacrosse football player that people kind of know, undersized guy. Those are the four. That is not top tier, obvious playoff level receiving core. And the real key is Fields wasn't here in the spring. He has to graduate from Virginia before he can come play at Notre Dame. Actually, Bo Collins from Clemson did the same thing last year. But I bring that up because not only did the quarterbacks split reps 3 ways all spring, they didn't have Malachi Fields. Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison were on were on load management because of that run. I think Notre Dame and Ohio State, maybe Texas, kind of tailored their springs differently to different players. In other words, one guy, Emil Wagner at the right tackle, had 990 snaps. I mean, you would go to practice and you wouldn't see him participating. So they did that with Greathouse and a couple other guys. My point is, rotating quarterbacks all spring. Fields isn't there. Greathouse isn't being used all the time. Pauling's new. Faison plays 2 sports. They need the summer and they need camp to give confidence to the passing game.
Be very interesting to watch. Obviously, Miami dialing down its aggressiveness, probably significantly, if you look at what they're doing, going from their former DC Lance to the new guy, Corey Heatherman. If you just watched kind of what he did at Minnesota, considerably less like just blitzing from all angles. So they're going to have to probably be pretty in sync and sit down and get some of these zone coverages with Carr, assuming, like you said, Carr wins the job. Offensive line, I'm so excited for this week 1 matchup because I think this is probably the best offensive line matchup of the season. Right? Miami, Notre Dame, both are loaded across the front. Yeah. Can they be better?
Yeah, they brought back 5 starters and they lost 3 starters. That's how much happens to Notre Dame's offensive line last year. So Notre Dame's basically they lost 2 guys that started at guard and 1 guy that started at center. None of those guys were supposed to start the year, but with all the injuries, they end up filling in and doing a great job. Sam Pendleton, Pat Coogan, and Rocco Spindler, they all went to Tennessee, Northwestern, Nebraska. Indiana, Nebraska. So quality guys, but they were all going to be backups. This offensive line seems loaded to me. They bring back Anthony Knapp at left tackle. He started 15 games. He got injured against Penn State in the semifinals. Billy Strouth is back at left guard. Ashton Craig was the starting center last year who got hurt. He is back now. And then Charles Jagusa, I think, was the story of the season for Notre Dame. Like he was their number 1 offensive lineman going to the year. He got hurt August 5th or something along those lines. Without that playoff run, he would not have played. Without injuries in the playoffs, he would not have played. He starts in the national championship game at guard after beginning the year at left tackle and not playing for 4 months. And you just think to yourself, and he came in against Penn State, you're like, how can a guy be that talented to sit out that long? So he's their best guard. He's their best tackle. He's a true junior. And I think he's played 5 games in his career. It's just strange because he redshirted and then he was hurt all year. But 2 of the games you play or 1.5 of the games you play are Penn State and Ohio State. And you look good doing it. So they love the offensive line. And then you put the running backs behind it. I can tell you what game 1 game plan is. It's protecting the quarterback a little bit in this one.
Yeah. I do think this offense has a real chance to be better than last year's offense, though, even with the loss of Leonard. Am I off base there?
No, you're not. It's funny because I think they'll be better and harder to stop, but maybe not as stubbornly effective. In other words, like you knew they were going to convert in certain situations last year. They had to get to 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3 or 4th and 2 or 4th and 1. I mean, I think they can attack from more angles this year. It should be a much more varied offense. At some point last year, everyone realized Riley Leonard was just an average college passer that was a tremendous college runner, and defenses adjusted to it. And at times, I feel like they got the upper hand on Notre Dame because they just could not attack you, not only deep, but really not in standard mid-range passing games at times against good defenses. So I think Notre Dame will be able to do that this year. So what you give up in a short yardage situation, I think they gain a lot overall offensively.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, Tim. Take a break. On the flip side, we're going to come back and talk this ridiculously good Irish defense.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, guys, we are back on the Summer School series here, talking Notre Dame on the Cover 3 College Ball Podcast. This is Irish Illustrated's Tim O'Malley. Tim, let's hit a little defense here. So Al Golden off to the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals. How is this Irish defense going to change because of the coordinator change And how is the Irish defense going to change due to personnel changes?
Yeah, it's interesting. Chris Ash said all the right things, because when you take over for Al Golden and that defense, you have plenty of guys coming back. You don't want to say, I'm reinventing the wheel. We're going to change things here. Notre Dame's played great D for 2 years, really good D for 3 years under Golden. Ash mentioned it's Notre Dame's defense. I'm looking to enhance it. It changes in terms of personnel right up the middle. They lost Howard Cross and Riley Mills, Jack Kaiser at linebacker, and then the big one for me is Xavier Watts at safety. You had that leadership. Those guys were fifth, sixth, and sixth year guys up your middle with a third-year coordinator. I mean, they showed up in Texas A&M ready to play college football. There was no training wheels for that defense. They were ready to roll. So little different there. You lose. I think Watts he has this problem solver. Al Golden used to say Jack Kaiser and Xavier Watts were problem solvers on the grass. In other words, when something's going on you didn't prepare for, one play later, they were able to kind of communicate what he wanted. So that changes, but the talent level is very high. The talent level of linebacker has really increased. We talked about Kingston Viliamu-Asa last year as a freshman. He also missed, it was November and the beginning of the playoff run, and then he's in there against Penn State, maybe the best game of all the linebackers. You're thinking that guy's missed 2 months and he's playing like this. So love the linebackers. And then I cannot believe what has happened to Notre Dame defensive back recruiting, because under Brian Kelly, when they were successful defenses, they could not run with other teams. I mean, you're looking at Clarence Lewis out there against Alabama, and he just so badly overmatched. Last year, they're down to their third corner, Leonard Moore. He ends up being better than all of them. I think Leonard Moore is better than Benjamin Morrison. He was fantastic last year. They brought back Christian Gray as well, who kind of won the Penn State game. Christian Gray also got beat by Jeremiah Smith, but we're going to go ahead and say that happens to human beings in college football. So I love the secondary and the linebackers. We talked a little bit about it. The defensive line is a little bit in flux, I think, when you lose Mills and Cross.
I did like some of the guys they had coming off the edge there in the playoff run. I assume like that is potentially a strength. If this team can get a lead, that they can get after the passer a little better. Yeah,
and actually their two best pass rushers last year got injured in September in back-to-back weeks. Jordan Botello, week 3, Boubacar Traore, week 4, and they are both back live. So the quote was they are full go for summer, which not camp, but summer, which means you figure they'll be pretty healthy. So it was their third string guy, Junior Tui Halamaka, who he could have redshirted last year and transferred out, but it was game 4 when 2 defensive ends went down. He stayed, ended up making huge plays against Georgia and Penn State.
Yes.
Yeah. They're pretty deep at defensive end. Deep enough for Marcus Freeman even said, I love our defensive ends. And that's not something he normally will just kind of pin down one position. Bryce Young is Bryant Young's son. If you watch the Georgia game, he was the guy that was wreaking havoc on the punt block. Every time he would run in there and block a punt, hit the punter, and it's okay, we'll just go do it again. So they have high hopes for him. And then the interior, I mentioned they lost Mills and Cross. They have a 5-man rotation that Notre Dame fans have accepted as playoff worthy. We will find out because they don't have a Mills or Cross in there. They brought in Jared Dawson from Louisville, be part of a rotation. Gabriel Rubio will be part of a rotation. It is just 5. They're hoping 6 guys will rotate, but there is no preseason. Oh, this is one of the top 10 or even top 20 defensive linemen in the country. I think they have to go prove it at defensive tackle and nose tackle.
Safety is a concern, or just is an accepted drop off?
It's an accepted drop off for me. Adon Schuler's back. He was kind of the breakout defensive back for them early in the year. He's a junior now. Played all 16 games at a pretty high level. They brought in Jalen Stroman from Virginia Tech. He missed all of last year with I believe it was a collarbone injury. He had cleanup surgery when he arrived on campus as well. He's a possible starter. Luke Talich is a true junior who was kind of a special teams demon for 2 years. He had an interception touchdown against Florida State last year. That sounds better than it really was when you had an interception touchdown against Florida State in college football. It sounds like a career highlight, but he had that last year. Tall, rangy guy. He's actually an ex-preferred walk-on. So if you're looking at talent drop-off, Xavier Watts was the ex-scout team receiver too. So maybe it's just how they develop in South Bend. It takes a little while, but I cannot imagine they're as good at safety as they were with Xavier Watts there. They do like their safeties, though. They might have 4 with Tay Johnson, a Fort Wayne kid, also involved. But let's put it this way. If you had Xavier Watts and Kyle Hamilton, you wouldn't be talking about the 4 safeties you have. You'd be talking about your starting safeties and how they are nationally relevant. So I think development is necessary at safety as well.
Is there a guy on this defense who, if he arrives a year early, that like earlier than projected, that this defense goes like total nuclear next level?
Yes, Billy Amuasa and Bryce Young, who we mentioned. Those are the two. They're sophomores. They're the two best pro prospects other than Leonard Moore, who is a sophomore. That's a heck of a class. I just realized those guys are all sophomores. Yeah. Leonard Moore, Billy Amuasa, and Bryce Young at 3 levels as sophomores. They are Notre Dame's best pro prospects other than Jeremiah Love, who I think goes without saying. If Trey Orey is back and fully healthy, he's a junior. He's played about 5 games in his career. He looked great until he got hurt against Miami of Ohio, which it's always bad when you lose guys to Miami of Ohio. But he's another one that I think if he were a true junior that was never hurt last year, people would know about him and he'd be thinking NFL after this year. I think now, of course, he has to. It was a torn ACL, so he torn ACL in September. You figure he's at his best by November. Those are the guys where young Billy Amuasa and then Leonard Moore has already arrived, in my opinion, where this defense could go to another level even.
Awesome. Tim, this schedule here is interesting. It reminds me a little bit of a team that the Irish actually played in 2018 in the Clemson Tigers, right? So like that schedule for them started fairly difficult. You had a early game in College Station against a pretty salty A&M team. You had that was the year that Syracuse was actually really good and won 9 or 10 ball games.
Yeah, right.
And then you finished with just 5 or 6 teams that were somewhere between like disarray or just not competitive with you. Yeah. And Clemson showed 0 like down the stretch at all. And like they were clearly working on other stuff as Notre Dame. And then even Alabama, they totally punked the Tide there
right.
Out in Santa Clara. I kind of like, even though you don't get a bye week and you play 5 games in November, if you can get ready quarterback wise, I do like how this sets up for the Irish to not only make a playoff, but like make a run.
Yeah. Other than Steve Angeli being on Syracuse and Syracuse having a good offensive year, they lost a lot of production, Syracuse. But that's a off the field storyline, not something Notre Dame should be worried too much about on senior day. I agree with you. You get out of that USC game mid-October, Notre Dame should bury teams after that. So you can't lose 2 before that USC game ends though either, because then you're kind of out of the national consciousness. You got to fight your way into the playoffs, and you're doing that against teams that aren't any good. So you're going out there winning by 40. How much do people care? The schedule. If you just look at Purdue's the only break, and it's weird to say that as a person that grew up in South Bend and going to Notre Dame. Purdue used to be, no matter what, at least a hard fought trap. I mean, they have to completely overhaul to be a hard fought trap this year. Miami's a Sunday. They do have a 10-day. There's a bye week there, which is huge. So when I say Miami and A&M are back to back, there is a break in there. A weird break, but you need it. You don't want to do Miami and A&M back to back necessarily in a 6-day period. So that's the first bye. If you can get through those 2, Boise at Arkansas is for me the biggest trap of the year. I just think it's going to be an absolute hornet's nest down there for Notre Dame. And then USC, it is pretty smooth sailing, especially that I know Freeman has lost 1 game each year he shouldn't have, but boy, it did not look like that was going to happen again after Northern Illinois, the way they focused. And I'm sure Northern Illinois will be playing on loop all of November for those games and maybe for the Purdue game for everybody to remember what it was like, because that bounce back was tougher mentally than anything else.
Absolutely. I mean, if you had to pick one in the back in the final 5, it's probably Pitt due to the high variance nature of the schedule. And I will note, like Syracuse and Stanford both lost by far their best defensive lineman in the spring portal. So
that's right.
Watson went from Syracuse to Texas, right? And then Bailey left Stanford when they fired their coach. So, I mean, that should be a nice little reprieve. NC State already done summer school with them. I don't know that they have the ability to resist being pushed around by this Irish offensive line. Yeah. But like, I mean, this does set up to be this Irish team. I like it, man. I think Freeman's doing a really nice job here.
It's just tougher than last year. I know they lost to Northern Illinois, but I mean, last year I think I said on this show, if they beat A&M, they're going undefeated. Well, that lasted 7 days, but then they went undefeated for the next 13 games, including some better teams in the playoffs. This is if they beat Miami. I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated at this point. That I wouldn't say that until about entering the USC game. And the USC game got very interesting. It always is, but Notre Dame's former GM went to USC and started talking some trash about Notre Dame in the back. So that is a fun but that's off the field storyline and future recruiting versus recruiting. USC will come to play, but Notre Dame has absolutely handled USC in South Bend since, I guess it was 2011 the last time. It was Matt Barkley and Robert Woods that beat Notre Dame back then and Dane Chris. So that's how long it's been. I think if they get through that Arkansas-Boise State, that's a tough back-to-back too. You got Arkansas and Boise State. I do think Notre Dame fans will be up for the Boise State game. It's not like they're not well known over the last 20 years. That's less of a trap than I think. I mean, Boise, they were a playoff team last year. I think people understand that. It's no longer a trap, but it's one Notre Dame should win physically in the trenches, but it's still, those back-to-back games are tough for me.
No doubt about it. Tim, want to continue to enjoy all your awesome coverage there at Irish Illustrated. Appreciate the time.
Hey, thanks a lot, bud.